Hello, thanks for watching today. I did this interview that you're about to watch for Widow 180, the podcast, and it was episode 24 with my guest, Astarie Dennis. Astarie had spent most of her marriage to Stephen being his caretaker. He was sick most of the time they were married, but she found a creative outlet, something just for her, in producing skincare products. She dove into learning the math and the science behind producing the lotions and things, and she loved it. She decided to open her own business called Astarie Apothecary after Stephen passed away. And she shares her story today about going from caretaker to creative entrepreneur. If you're new here and new to this channel, I'm Jen. I help empower widows with stories, tips, advice, and support. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and the little bell so you don't miss out on any future videos that are coming your way. Enjoy the interview. Hello, listeners out there. I have a special guest this week. Her name is Astarie Dennis, and she is here to share her story. And she became a widow just recently in June of this year, so only about 6 months ago. Astarie, thank you so much for being here today to talk to us.
Thank you for having me.
So we have a lot to talk about. I do want to start with just having you tell us about your husband, Stephen, and how he was sick from the time you met him, right?
Yes. So Stephen and I met in 2011, in June of 2011. And at the time, I didn't know that he had any illnesses or anything, but I found out later, had type 1 diabetes from about 13 or 14 years old, and had been battling with that for a while. It caused other issues with his body, and he'd been just dealing with that. But when I met him, you could never know, and most people say that you never would know that he was sick. But I, of course, found out later on as we progressed. But yes, from the time that we met, he was dealing with that.
Yeah. So when did you guys end up getting married? What year was that?
In 2012, in April of 2012, we got married just 9 months after we met.
Okay. Pretty quick, but you knew. Yeah.
Yes.
So
He knew before I knew.
Yeah. And tell me about, I think you were telling me like the day before you got married, he was actually in the hospital. Was it the day before?
Yes.
So
It was the day before and about a week and a half before that. He had been in the hospital. We kept joking with the doctors that we were going to have the wedding in the hospital, but they ended up discharging him the day before.
Okay.
But he had been really, really sick, and really didn't know why at the time. But yeah, he got discharged just in time.
Yeah. Okay. So then wedding day, and you guys were living in Illinois at the
Correct.
time. And then, and you and Stephen were really involved in the church?
Yes. I grew up in the church. He was in church as a younger child, but hadn't gone as much as an adult. But we kind of talked about it, and he ended up going, and I was going, and then we started going together. It's kind of what pushed us to go ahead and get married. We were living together, but we hadn't gotten married yet. But just going to church and feeling like that was the right thing to do at the time. So we went ahead and made the jump.
He was studying Christian ministry at that time?
Not at that time. When he passed away, he had been in school about a year, almost 2 years, to get into Christian ministries. He had a passion for younger aged boys, so teenagers and a little bit younger. He would always say that was the age that was pretty influential for him, and if he had had better guidance, maybe he would have made different decisions. So he was really passionate about working with that age group.
That is awesome. And you said people couldn't tell that he was sick. He was devoting his life and his time to helping these other people, but you never could tell that he was sick the whole time.
Yes. Right up until those last few weeks, most of the time you would never know.
So he hit it pretty well.
most of the time, which was a good thing and a bad thing, but
Yeah. So things kind of really took a turn in 2017. What happened January 1st of 2017 for you guys?
So January 1st, we had made a sort of New Year's resolution to go work out and get on that health kick. So we'd gotten ourselves a membership to a gym for Christmas, and we decided to go that day. And we went and we were doing the different workouts using the different machines, and Steven got on one of the stationary bikes. And he came and he told me, I'm having a hard time actually lifting my leg to do the entire turn of the pedal. And with everything that he has going on, him having difficulty sometimes is not that big of a deal. But then he said, and I kind of feel like my right side is a little tingly. Now, I had been in home care for a few years at this point, dealing with the elderly. So I kind of knew some of the signs of having a stroke and things like that. And so when he said one whole side of his body felt off, made me a little nervous. And then he said he had been feeling like that all day. So I, was pretty much like, I think we need to go to the hospital just to make sure. But we did end up finding out that he had had a stroke that affected the right side of his body that day. And it all stemmed from difficulties with the diabetes.
Yeah. So he suffered the stroke, and then you also said 2017, that was kind of the turning point because he also had to start dialysis, right?
Correct. A few months later, we found out that his kidney function was to the degree that they now classified him as end-stage renal failure, and he had to start dialysis. His doctor had recommended possibly getting the fistula put in just in case, but that normally takes 3 to 6 months to actually be ready. They couldn't wait that long, so he got a graft instead. And then we actually ended up starting dialysis. We were doing it at home at first, so I was actually inserting the needles, running the machine, and we were doing okay at home. He was comfortable at home. Unfortunately, about a year or so later, we moved away from where we were living in Illinois. We were hoping to have him have a better chance at getting a kidney and pancreas transplant. And down in Illinois, they have down in Houston, their medical center there is the best in the country so far for those sorts of procedures. So we figured that was the best place to be. Unfortunately, he suffered a heart attack about a year after we moved there. And so that moved him back in center for dialysis, which he wasn't a fan of, but they just wanted to be able to keep a better eye on him with his heart. So
yeah,
we ended up having to do that.
So you guys moved from Illinois to Houston because you were getting these better treatments and trying to get on the transplant list and all of these things. But you also have your son. You said
Yes.
you were homeschooling at the same time.
Yes, we had been homeschooling him since kindergarten, and it was easier for him and how his personality was, but also just with all the medical things that were coming up with my husband, it was easier to just not have to pull him out of school or figure out what to do with him. We could just have him with us, or whatever the situation needed. So he had been homeschooling, and of course he's growing up seeing all the different health issues, the doctor visits, the ambulance trips, all those things. So he's, maturing at a rate that most children don't have to.
Right.
And so
he was how old when you moved to, well, he must have been like 7 or 8 at that time, around
we
20.
moved to Houston.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was almost 2 when we met. So this was pretty much his whole life.
His whole life. Yeah. You told me he had to grow up pretty quickly just being in that environment. So you guys, you were also doing your skincare business all at the same time.
Yes, trying to keep it all together.
And
My one thing about my
Stephen,
husband,
yeah.
he was very big on following passions. He didn't believe in just going to work and coming home and then that was it.
Yeah.
And I had already been sort of working towards my business before I met him, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what. My son had some skin issues, some eczema, and just even now he has reactions to like grass and mosquito
Mhm.
bites, things like that. So I was just trying to find something that was going to work for him that didn't involve steroids and all that kind of stuff. So that my research led me to sort of making my own little lotions and creams for him. But of course, when it comes to anything creative, you go down a rabbit hole. And I started going down this rabbit hole and it was just more and more interesting. And I was never a math and science type of person, but skincare, especially, I started out making soap, cold processed soap. And it allowed me to be creative with the colors and design, but also use that sort of science side to make sure all the ingredients come together safely and effectively. So, and now I just do
You
way too
just
much,
took it and
probably.
ran. That's what you did.
I probably do way too much now. Anytime a friend or a family member is like, yeah, I use this and this, oh, I could probably make that for you. But
Yes.
it's a passion, but it's also it was also a way to kind of let out some of the stress and tension when things would be going
Oh, yeah.
crazy with my husband. So
Yeah. It, like you said, that was your passion. That was your thing. That was your
mhm.
go-to, your outlet. And I think that's incredible. It's a really interesting, like you said, rabbit hole to go down, but it's very cool too, you know?
It
Um,
is.
so you started doing this business and you were
Mhm.
just kind of doing that out of your home. Uh,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
because with Steven and having to go back and forth with the hospital, and then with your son being home, you had a lot of things going on. But when he did suffer the heart attack, and so that was in 2018 when he had the heart attack, and then
Yeah.
okay. And you told me it was right about that time when you guys ended up having a really important conversation, and it was kind of like what his wishes were. How did that conversation come up? Did he bring that up, or like what was that conversation? Because you told me that was kind of pivotal in
Just
you know your decisions and things.
yes. So originally, anytime you go to the doctor, they ask you, do you have not advanced directive? Do you have all that sort of paperwork? Do you have a will? Do you have power of attorney? Do you have that assigned? And he would always say no, and they would always ask him, well, do you want to do it? And he never did. For whatever reason, he just, I think before this time, it made it feel too final that something may happen, so he never wanted to do it. But after his heart attack, they initially they put a stent in to open the vessel back up. He was taking blood thinners, seemed to be fine, but he suffered a complication about another 8 or 9 months later. That stent failed and that artery was blocked again. And this time they had to actually go in and do real surgery. They had to do the bypass instead of just the stent, which is just more involved. Thankfully, they didn't have to actually go through his chest like they normally do. They were able to do it with a robot, which was crazy, which is something that we probably wouldn't have had access to if we hadn't moved to Houston. So that was a blessing. So it was less invasive. But with that procedure, they put a tube into your lung to drain any fluid that builds up, and his lung actually collapsed during that whole process, and he ended up having really bad complications from that. And after the surgery, during recovery, he actually became unresponsive. It wasn't very long, but basically the pain medicine he was on, mixed with the diabetes, mixed with the kidneys not working right, something, it was too much, and they had to actually bring him back. um And I guess for him, after that experience, he was over it. He
Yeah.
said, I didn't like how that felt. I don't want to be on all these machines. I don't want to deal with the dialysis. I don't want to have to go back and have another surgery, because he knew that his heart wasn't okay. And
Yeah.
with the diabetes, it was just going to continue that way. He didn't want to have any more of the shots. When you have diabetes, it ruins your veins. So anytime that he had to go to the doctor, they have to stick him multiple times. He actually got to the point where they put a permanent port in his chest so they wouldn't have to stick him all the different times. It was just a lot, and he was tired of it. Dialysis was completely uncomfortable and painful, and the after effect was that he was throwing up, he was running back and forth to the bathroom, and it was like, for him, by the time he started to feel a little bit better, it was time for his next dialysis treatment, and it was just this cycle. And then we were learning some more statistics about the transplants and their how long the organs would last, and his quality of life afterward, and the fact that even if he got the pancreas and kidney transplants, yes, his diabetes would be gone, and yes, he wouldn't be in kidney failure anymore, but any of the damage that had already happened wouldn't be fixed. So he basically would still be living the same life minus dialysis and minus insulin shots, but he would still have stomach issues. His heart would still be damaged. His lung would still be damaged from the surgery. His eyesight at that point had been messed up from the stroke. All the stroke symptoms would still be there. And he just, at 30 something, was just like, this isn't worth it.
I know. How old was he? He was so young. How old was he?
He was, so many things run together, but he passed away when he was 36. He had just turned 36 in March. So I think he was, 34? 33, 34, something like that. And he just felt like, and then on top of that, the way that he felt like my quality of life was suffering because of everything that he was going through. And our son's quality of life was suffering because of everything, because, he would say, you can't just go out, you can't really flourish with your business because you can't bring in the income, just so many things that he was thinking about. And so he really didn't want to continue the process. Now, with dialysis, if you don't continue dialysis, they pretty much put you on hospice because it's inevitable that, things are not going to go well. So, we actually started looking into things, and he was telling me how he didn't want a DNR. He didn't want to be on any machines for any period of time. While he had that second heart surgery, he was on a breathing machine. He had a tube down his throat for a little while. He had the machine in his lungs trying to drain that. He just had all this stuff he was attached to, and he hated it. And then he hated being attached to the dialysis machine. So we basically talked about all of the things that he would want to happen if for some reason he passed out and became unresponsive, or something like that was going on. He talked about he didn't want a big huge funeral. He didn't want to be buried. He knew it was going to cost way too much money. He just wanted to be cremated. He was a big North Carolina fan, UNC basketball fan, so he always would joke that he wanted his ashes spread over there on their campus. But and that was also him making a joke about everything. But it was an important conversation to have, though.
It was, yeah. And good for you to be able to do that, or him anyway, for being brave enough to have that conversation. That's super scary. That's really scary.
Yes. It's not what you expect when you get married at 20 something.
No.
That not even 10 years later, you'd be having those sorts of conversations with your spouse, but
no.
Life.
So it was in May of this year when he was back in the hospital. COVID is all happening. So then you can't go and be with him in the hospital.
Yes.
So you're having to, kind of navigate seeing him for like short periods of time, or not even seeing him.
At first, not being able to come see him at all. No.
Yeah. And then they sent him home. This was in June. They ended up sending him home. What was it? June 1st.
So what happened? What happened when they sent him home that time?
So he had been in the hospital. They weren't sure. Some things they weren't sure 100%, but we found out that it was things going on with his heart again. And during that time, he started to sort of talk weird. He was saying he was seeing things that weren't there. He wasn't sure what was going on. So I was very, my alert was up because it didn't make sense. That had never happened before. So they ended up sending him home. They said that his heart was better and the infection, because he had an infection, was at least more controlled. But I didn't feel comfortable with them sending him home. He was just still not normal. He was not talking like himself. It just didn't make sense. And they sent him home in the middle of the night. So it just, the situation I didn't feel comfortable. So they sent him home. And even when he came home, he didn't know what was going on. He didn't know where he was. He didn't think he was home. So we ended up being home together that first night. And he ended up, the spot that he had the infection, it got red and it was warm. So I said, no, you need to go back. So he went back. This time they sort of talked to me. They let me know what was going on. We made a plan. So I felt more comfortable and they sent him back home. But when they sent him back home that time, actually seemed to be relatively okay. We actually had dinner together. Unfortunately, at this time, my mother-in-law had also gone to the hospital for something way simpler. So she wasn't home, but my son, my husband, and I, we were all home. I fixed him a meal that he asked for, which I don't even remember now, and we sat down and ate together, which we hadn't been able to do in months. Either he was too sick or just didn't feel like eating. So yeah, we hadn't really sat down together and just eaten a meal together. Normally, he had some stomach issues. So normally we might eat a bite and then he'd be sick and he wouldn't be able to eat with us or something. But he actually ate the whole plate. And we would joke, when my son was little, he didn't like to finish his food. So we would talk about being in the clean plate club. So he actually made a joke about, for once, he's in the clean plate club again. And, he put his dishes in the sink, put our son to bed. And I had some soaps to make, so I was working on that, and Stephen went to go sort of lay down. Unfortunately, he still did have some stomach issues, so he was going back and forth to the restroom. Now, due to the diabetes and his kidney issues, his blood pressure was completely out of whack. So he had an issue where his blood pressure would actually drop when he would stand up. Whereas most of us, it goes up, his would drop. Now, some people that happen slowly and you might get a little dizzy, but for him, it would happen so quickly that it sometimes did make him pass out, which he did. And I was in the back, so I didn't know that he fell, but he kind of called me after he woke up. I went to go, help him back to the bed. I told him, just call me if you have to get back up again, which with his stubborn self, he did not, but that's also normal. So I went back to the back. I heard him get up and go to the bathroom, and then I heard him go back to the room. Somewhere just maybe a couple of minutes after that, I ended up going to our second restroom, and my son came out and knocked on the door, and he said, "Dad's making some weird noises. Do you want me to go check on him?" And I said, he's probably just not feeling good. He normally makes, moaning sounds because he just stomach hurts. So I just told him, just let him be. He's fine. Or not he's fine, but, I'll come and check on him in just a second.
Yeah.
Which now I'm kind of glad that I didn't have him go in there. But so he went and laid back down, and I got out the bathroom and I went and I opened the door to our room, and it's dark and quiet, and sleep is hard for him. So most of the time, if it's quiet, I usually am also really quiet just so I can hopefully let him stay asleep. So I kind of opened the door quiet and I looked in and he was laying down, but his legs were hanging over the bed. So it was like he was sitting on the bed and then he kind of laid back, which he never sits like that. It was uncomfortable for his legs. So I knew that was kind of weird, but I said, well, maybe he just fell asleep that quickly because he does that. But it just was weird to me. So I went and I got a little bit closer and I noticed that his eyes were open, but it didn't look like he was breathing. So started that whole process of, calling 911, because I turned the lights on and I could tell for sure that he wasn't breathing. And all of my CPR and first aid training sort of went out the window. I had been trained in CPR, trained in first aid, all of those things because of my jobs. But in that moment, it completely froze for me, which is interesting because I had to give my mother-in-law the Heimlich maneuver. My son had to get stitches when he was a baby, and I had to deal with the blood. All of that was instant. Didn't even think about it. But I think part of me, now that I think back, knew that it was probably no point, and I kind of knew that he really didn't want any intervention. But in the moment, that's the first thing you think. We need to do something because maybe we can help him. So at somewhere in between all of this, and I know the timeline is all off, my son, of course, hears all the commotion. He wants to come and see what he can do. I couldn't, take the time to be gentle and everything. I just told him, go get the neighbor so I can have some help. We're still waiting for the ambulance to come. So the neighbor comes over and she actually gives him CPR. She starts CPR for me because I just could not. I had my hand there ready, but I couldn't bring myself to actually start it. Part of it as well was the fact that he had heart issues, and I knew that true CPR actually causes damage to your lungs, to your kidneys, to your heart, to, if you do it properly, just because you have to use so much force to get the heart to do what it normally does. And I think that was part of my hesitation as well. I'm like, I really don't want to hurt him. And I used to say that, I hope I never have to give it because I don't want to cause more damage.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that. Wow.
So it was a lot. I'm like, well, if he survives the CPR, now his other lung is going to be messed up. I'm thinking, you kind of have these rapid thoughts. I mean, even just getting him off the bed, because you have to be on a hard, flat surface. I couldn't lift him. So that in and of itself took time for me to even get him off the bed. It's just me and my son. So, and I didn't want my son anywhere around. I wanted him to see as little as possible. It was bad enough that I already had to, get him up and open the door for the ambulance and all that kind of stuff. So while the paramedics finally come and they're using their machine and they're working on him, they get a rhythm, lose it, get a rhythm, lose it. And then the last time they kept it, and so they said, we're going to go to the ER. We're going to take him to the ER. You can come after. Of course, it's still COVID. So normally I could ride in the ambulance, but I couldn't. So I had to get a ride there. At first, they didn't want to let me in because they're very strict about it's only for certain stipulations that they'll even let you in, which in this case, they did.
Yeah.
So at this point, I didn't know it, but at this point, they were still working on him, but he had a rhythm that whole time. So that's why they kept working. That's why nobody came out and talked to me because, he had a team of doctors in there working on him. I could hear commotion. I didn't know that was him, but that's who they were working on.
Yeah.
So when they finally did talk to me, I knew that it probably wasn't great because his actual heart doctor that we had been seeing was there, who he was supposed to be on vacation. He was supposed to be out of the office, but he came in because I'm assuming that his boss was there, and then, or I don't know how that works, but the doctor above him was there, and then he was there, and there was one other doctor that was there. And they all came in to talk to me.
Okay.
And like I said, I knew that it wasn't great because he was supposed to be gone. He wasn't supposed to be in the office at all. He came in just to work on him, and he had been amazing with us. He's the one that even got them to look at his heart deeper in the first place, thankfully, and they found the first blockage, because at first they kept saying, well, we don't see enough evidence to do all of it, but on that push for it. So, really respect him, really. And it was nice to have him there as well, because when the doctors asked me, basically we have a rhythm, but it's not getting better. The vitals are not getting better. They're getting worse. And so we can either let it be for a couple of days and see what happens, or, go ahead and just let him come off of all of the machines. And I knew that he didn't want to be on the machines. And if they couldn't see any evidence that it was going to get better, then it was kind of a decision that he had already made, thankfully for me, that I didn't have to make. And then just having his doctor there, his doctor said, yes, he's expressed the same thing to me, that he really doesn't want to just be sitting on a machine for nothing. So
that's
at this
good
point,
to have that support with the doctor.
Yes.
So it wasn't like you were standing there making the decision and people are staring at you waiting for a decision.
Right.
Right. His doctor, who you guys love and respect and who, has been working with you this whole time, is saying the same exact thing, that he had expressed those wishes. And so that had to be like this huge support standing right next to you with
it
all
definitely
that going
was.
on.
It helped so much to just have somebody else. And even his mother, I was talking to her on the phone, and even she, agreed that we both knew that that wasn't what he wanted. As much as we may have wanted it, it's not what he wanted. So we actually did agree to wait just a few hours because my sister-in-law, as soon as she heard what was going on, they got on the road to come from the DC area down to Texas. So we were trying to hold out for her to be able to at least come and see him. And my mother-in-law was trying to work with the other hospital to let her come over. Again, the COVID stuff was an issue. And, coming out of town, technically, they probably wouldn't have let my sister-in-law come up anyway. But so we did wait a little while. But the next morning, because at first they wouldn't let me go up to see him. They said he was not life or death yet, which I didn't understand. But there was a nurse that had been working with him when he was there previously, because they put him back on the same floor that he was on before. And she, she called me on my phone personally and said, I know what they said, but I'm going to get you up here. You don't have to wait. Because they started at this point, they had started allowing visitors for a few hours. But I mean, really, I didn't want to wait that long because I was afraid that by the time I got up there, maybe something else would have happened and I, wouldn't have been able to see him. But she did. She worked it out for me to come up there. And so I got to go and sit with him. And again, it's just like all the people that were with him along that time, it just worked out. She was so sweet and just so kind. I mean, she had tears in her eyes. I'm trying not to cry, but it worked out. So we ended up the next morning, they came in, did some more checks, and, basically said that if anything, the numbers are getting even worse. And so my mother-in-law, we just decided that we weren't going to wait, that it was better for him to just go ahead and just be at rest. So had to sign those papers, which was very difficult.
Yeah.
But again, I really want to reiterate how important it is to just have those type of conversations, even at a younger age, because it feels like you'll never have to do that. But I guess I had a little bit of experience because my mother died when I was 3 months old. So my father had to make those decisions, and they found out that she was sick when she was 7 months pregnant with me. And then she just got worse and worse and worse until she passed away. So it was kind of more instant for them. At least I had time to kind of process all of this. Yeah. But it's just so important to just already, because it makes everything else so much easier. As a wife, the questions, the permission, the decisions all fall on me. No matter what anybody else thinks, I have to sign the final paperwork. And to not have to think about it in those moments when I'm already so out of my mind. And then I'm still making decisions for our son, trying to comfort him, but also take care of him and make sure he eats. I don't want to eat, but just to not have to think about it, to just know, okay, this is what he wants, this is what he doesn't want. Okay, let's do it. It made it a lot easier. So,
exactly. So then you guys, so he passed away. What was the date exactly that he passed? June 2nd.
June 2nd, 2020.
And then, so then you said almost immediately, like just a couple of days after, you started packing to move. Because really the only reason why you were in Houston was for doctors.
Yes, that was it. We had no family. We really didn't even have any friends because we really didn't go anywhere. I went to work a few days a week. We hadn't found a church, and we homeschooled, so we weren't really around a lot of people. And then, of course, March of that year, everything shut down, so we were really home all the time. And it was the beginning of the month, so it was either pay the rent for another month or figure out something else. So, my mother-in-law, we talked to each other. I had planned on going back to Illinois where we were before we came to Texas. We had friends, we had a church, we just had a little bit more of a support system, and it was less expensive than the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, which is a big deal. But my husband's family is in this area, and an aunt of his just said, no, just come up here. You guys can come and stay with me. So yeah, pretty much the next day we were planning moving, which was a whirlwind. So many things. That's another thing, like thinking about what to take, what to leave, especially of his. That was difficult because I didn't really have time to kind of go through and make decisions. We just grabbed some stuff. He was very big into suits. He loved suits. He would dress up just to go to dialysis because he said, if I have to feel crappy, then I shouldn't look crappy. So he would always, vest, tie, everything. So he had so many suits and dress clothes. And that part, it was kind of really, it was nice because we were able to donate all of those things to this organization that helps sort of like Dress for Success. I think they have that for women. But this was a program that helped men. So it's definitely something he would have wanted to do. But he had so much. We laugh about it now. He had so much. But yeah, just for me with my business, we had sort of a attached garage, and that's what I worked in.
Yeah.
But moving from that to someone's house where I'm going to be sharing a room with my son, there's no room for all of that. So there's so many things that I did not bring. That I'm still discovering to this day, where I'm like, oh, I left that. Okay.
So so you have all of your stuff for your business, but then all of his stuff, and that is a really short amount of time to be able to go through that stuff. That's one of the main things that most widows struggle with, is like what to do with the stuff. And you were just like, bam, I have to make a decision immediately.
Yes. And we had a truck, and there was a certain amount we could put on the truck, and that was it.
Man. Yeah.
That was it. So my husband was the type that as much as he was pretty spontaneous, because even us getting married was spontaneous for him, but he was also very, very logical, very practical. So he was always the type to say, yes, this means something, but do you really need it?
Yeah.
And that was in my head. Like, you don't need all 20 of them, or whatever of my suits. What are you going to do with them? You can't wear them. Our son has a long time before he's going to be big enough. He may not even like them. So I had my son pick out one suit that he really liked, and I kept that. And I kept a few of his dress shirts because my plan was to get the teddy bears made out of them.
Yes.
And everything else we pretty much either gave away. And I kept a few of his kind of sweat clothes and his North Carolina stuff I kept because I had to. But it helped. It was painful, but it was helpful because I knew we had a time frame and there was only so much we could take. So I kind of like the universe knew what I needed to make decisions. Like, this is what we have to do. Let's get it done. Otherwise, I don't know.
I know. It's hard. It's hard.
Probably would still have everything.
You don't want to throw anything away. Yeah, it's true.
No, nothing.
It is true. So tell me again, how old was Andrew when Stephen passed away? How old was he?
He was 10, almost 11. His birthday was in July, so a month off of his 11th birthday.
Okay. And so you end up moving to DC pretty much right away.
Yes.
And you had told me that you had a conversation with Stephen about leaving a legacy, and there was another conversation about, fulfilling your purpose, and both of you guys sat down and you kind of made a list, and that was pretty recently. But he
Yes.
really wanted you to continue with your skincare business. And
Yes, the beginning of the year, I think he just was feeling very reflective this
yeah.
year. But at the beginning of the year, he said, bring to me a list of the things that you want to do. Because I would come and I would tell him, oh, I want to take care of kids one day. We always talked about fostering. I love kids. I love, 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 love kids. Always have. I ran the nursery at our church. Originally, I was going to school for early childhood education, and he sort of had a passion for like that 10 to sort of 18, 19 age range. That was his thing. So anyway, he just said, I want you to write down all those things. Don't just come and tell me, write them down. And he wrote down a few things that he wanted to do. And he said, we're going to pray over it. We're going to keep looking at it. He put it on the wall, taped it to the wall. And I mean, I literally would randomly come in and find him like looking over the list. I don't know what he was doing. Maybe he was praying. I don't know. But he was just kind of looking over. And he would ask me, so what have you done today toward what you want to do? And he was really involved with my business. In fact, when the pandemic really got bad and we all were supposed to mask up and all of that, I switched from focusing on skincare to sewing masks. And when he would go to dialysis, he would take extra masks with him and kind of market them. That was always his thing. No matter what, he was always pushing something. He was my pusher. So he actually took it to a liquor store that was right by the bus stop that he had to get on. And showed the manager in there and was like, my wife makes these and you should sell these. And he did for a while. I made a few and he sold them in the store. That was Steven. That was him.
Oh, yeah.
Always.
He was backing you up. So
yes, always.
When you got to DC, you did this incredibly bold move and you got office space. Yes.
Yes. When we got here, I didn't have anywhere to set up my supplies. And I just kind of felt like, well, for now, I just leave it in the back burner. Like I have other things that I have to focus on. But that really wasn't working for me. And I knew that he wanted me to do more. So I was talking to a family friend who's an esthetician. And she said, well, you should come in. The owner of these offices that I work in, he has places all over. You should talk to them. Maybe you can get a space. And I mean, definitely that was part of my dream was to just, I never wanted like a storefront. Well, now I do. But back then I didn't want a storefront, but I just wanted a space to work in.
Yeah.
That I had a key. And the thing was that having the office space at home, I never really turned it off because it's right there. I can always go and do something. And so having a space where when I left work at work and then I could come home and be mom and all of that. So I did. I went. The man said, let's come and tour a room. I went and toured the room and I signed the contract that same day. Had no idea how I was going to pay for it every month. Because at this point, I'm really not selling anything yet. I'm not doing anything. I had shut down. My customers kind of knew what was going on. So it was
a lot of stuff. I mean, you're moving across the country. You're just trying to get set up, but you didn't have time to talk yourself out of it. You just did it.
No, I signed it and did it. And it was the best thing ever. And I knew when I got in the room, I was just like, okay, Steven. Okay, you did this.
Yes.
You did this.
Steven, so, for sure. Yeah. I did want to ask you something too that you mentioned about your faith, and you talked a lot about Steven, how important faith was to him, and his prayers for you guys and things. How has your faith been affected?
So I think I already mentioned, grew up in the church, pretty strict, devoutly in the church. So, you hear the pray about it and this trial is for a reason and it's for a purpose and all those things. And he and I would go back and forth. Usually I'd be the one sort of pushing him, don't give up on this, or but on the outside, he was constantly encouraging other people. He would say, I don't know why I have this going on, but, it's for something outside of me. And he definitely met some people that I know that he affected due to just the way that his spirit was, or with him only being in his 20s, late 20s when he started dialysis. That's not something that you see all of the time. And he actually met a gentleman that was actually, I think, maybe a year or two younger than him one day at dialysis. And I know he changed that man's perspective, because he just felt like, I'm way too young to be here. It's discouraging to go. I mean, even my husband would mention that, where everybody around him is like 70s, 80s, 90s, some people. And just to talk to kids, especially about making sure they take care of their diabetes. He met a little boy that was maybe 10 that had diabetes, and he, of course, he hated it. You can't eat the same. You have to do these pricks. Who wants to do that at that age? But he told him straight up, he said, I didn't take care of mine, and this is why I am where I am. If I had learned how to control it back then maybe it wouldn't be so bad. So he definitely had opportunities to touch people. But even for him, it got difficult. He just didn't understand why he wasn't getting better.
Yeah.
And frankly, neither did I. It didn't make sense. Of course, I like to say that, people like to say we're not God. We don't know the end from the beginning. But just seeing him and knowing the home self, the outside from home self, like I know both sides, it didn't make sense to me. So I actually sort of got, I don't know the right word. It's there, but I can't think of it. But just, I didn't really want to hear it. Like, of course, we're praying for you. We hope you're doing well. And I'm kind of like, I feel like that doesn't really do any good, because if it did, then my husband would still be here. That's sort of,
Yeah.
I never said that, but that's how I felt.
Yeah.
And even now I'm still struggling. There's a part of me that wants to go to church and kind of be back in that environment. There's definitely a spirit there that is way more uplifting than just being in a corner curled up by yourself. But the other side of me is just like, my faith is very fragile right now.
Yeah.
So still working on it. But
that's a good word, fragile. That's a really good word. I definitely felt that too. I felt the same. I know a lot of people do. I mean, your husband is such a good man, and he's so caring for other people, and he's devoting his life to helping other people and praying every day. And it's like, and you said, if that's not working, then what's the point?
What are we doing?
So anyway, it's tough. It's really tough. Excuse me. Oh, I need to get some water. So you have kind of gotten things going then with your skincare stuff. Tell us about the things that you make. Let's talk about, like, it's
sure.
Some of the things. Okay, I'm just going to tell everybody.
It's my favorite part.
I went shopping last night. You go to her Instagram, and I bought some things last night. I'm super excited.
Yes.
So the thing that I bought was the little it was a 3-pack with the cleanser, and then the toner, and then I also bought the little the baby powder, which I'm so excited. So tell everybody what you make, what you do, and all the good things.
Sure. So I originally just started making soap, so handmade soap bars from scratch, because I was fascinated by the fact that I could actually make soap. Like that just kind of blew my mind that I could actually make it. But then when I started making it and it was helping my son, then I was really hooked. So I started with the soap, and then I was making lotion. 2 basic, simple things. But again, you go down the rabbit hole. So there's a store out there, pretty popular, who we won't name, but it rhymes with hush, that, it kind of has made handmade skincare and sort of what I make popular outside of just the store, because people now know what these products are because of that store. But some of their ingredients and processes are not exactly what some people like. So, but they're kind of what's the word? They're kind of what we compare ourselves to as makers. So, so yeah, I started with those, and then it was sugar scrubs, and then it was, of course, bath bombs. Bath bombs were huge at one point, and I was making those, and they were selling like crazy. But then my son, because he grew up with his mom making products, he loves bubble baths. He loves, like, he wants his stuff. If I ever have an issue with him and I need him to go to bed or just calm down, but he's at the age where he doesn't want to take a shower.
Yeah.
I don't understand. But I can always bribe him with the bubble bath. So bubble bath, not recently, but I started getting more into things that are a little bit more science based. I mean, it's all science based, but a little bit more into chemistry. That's more of what it is. When I really started looking into ingredients that would help, because I've always had skin issues. And I started learning like certain things were not great for my skin that some people were using, that I was even using. And then I started to kind of look into ingredients and how they all work together and the chemistry of it all, which again, for me, math and science was never my forte. Reading, writing, sure. Math, science, no. But now I am doing all these measurements and using beakers and learning about all these different words that I never knew about. So I started with the skincare. I started with just one basic line of just a toner, a moisturizer, and a cleanser. And I was so blown away by how it was working. And then that just put me down a further rabbit hole. Well, what ingredients work better for this? And what ingredients work better for that? And then I was looking at popular skincare brands and the different things that they were making. And I was saying, oh, I can make that. And then I was learning about ingredients that I didn't know you could just buy. So, did the skincare, and then started making serums, which the active ingredients were really important to me. Again, me having skin issues, I have a lot of scars from acne. And so just learning what would help with that, especially with my skin and the melanin and the darker skin tone. Some products don't really help because they just don't penetrate, and just learning all those different things. So getting into serums, the baby powder, the baby line, sort of stemmed from having fertility issues. My husband and I had, of course, been trying our whole marriage to have a little one of our own, which I did find out that I was pregnant at one point, but unfortunately had a miscarriage. And then I started kind of learning how common that is, and how a lot of people don't like to talk about it or don't really bring it up. And so I wanted to do something about it. And this is where business for me sort of shifted, because I'm very passionate about a lot of different causes, but I can't give to all of them like I would like to.
Right.
So that's when I decided to sort of do more of awareness-based products. So I made the Rainbow Baby line, which a rainbow baby is a baby that is born after you have a loss. My son is a rainbow baby. So, and I decided that the proceeds from that would go to an organization that had something to do with infant death or miscarriage, something. I didn't know at the time what it was going to be. So I started making the soap, and then I made the baby powder. I have a diaper cream, just different products that go toward that, which allows me to have fun making the products. Yeah. But I can also give to different organizations. And then a few years ago, when a lot of things started to kind of get crazy with police and sort of that climate in the country with, people who look like me, being able to do something that sort of brought awareness to that as well was important to me. Diabetes awareness, of course, is important to me. My mother had leukemia, so that was something that I wanted to. Yep. So it kind of shifted and that whole thing when we talk about purpose, and my husband wanted me to really think about what was important. I knew that I couldn't give money, or even time to everything that was sort of like, oh, I really want to help with this. But being able to make a product and say, okay, proceeds from this product go here. So you get a great product. I mean, I think it's great. You get a great product out of it, and then you can also help something that you may, be passionate about. So,
Astarie, that is so great. That is so awesome. See, that's what I love about this. It's like you're creating things. You want to help people. Everybody needs to buy Astarie, because it's like this push forward, it's like this ripple effect. Whatever we do is going to help other people. And it's really amazing.
That's definitely the goal.
So yeah, we need to, okay. So where can we find your products and find you in all the places? Tell everybody.
So the most updated is always Instagram, which it is Astarie Apothecary on Instagram. And I know my first name is a little different, but
it's beautiful. Astarie. I love it. I love it.
But yes, I am pretty much Astarie Apothecary on Instagram, on Facebook. I have a YouTube channel. I used to post more regularly. I'm trying to get back to that, of videos of making products, giving a little behind the scenes. And then my website is Astarie Dennis co.com. And that's where we are. I'm still updating a few things. I know the holidays are approaching quickly, but still putting some things on there. And yeah, so basically I do, as far as the soaps, especially in different fragrances, I do a release sort of by the season. So about 4 or 5 times a year, I'll do like a whole fresh new scent option. And then I have some regulars that are always available. And then once a month, and it'll be much more regular starting in 2021. But every month I will feature a certain cause or organization that proceeds for the entire month go to that cause.
Oh my God.
So this month, I actually haven't had a chance to release it yet, so that'll be great. But this month I am supporting an organization back in Houston called it's Black Santa Houston, which it is this adorable Santa that, well, this year he didn't get to do it, but normally people would be able to come and see him and talk to him and take pictures, which they found a creative way to still do pictures with no contact. But
how are they doing that?
So I actually saw a few of the pictures, and they have him kind of like behind the couch, or just they found different ways to make it still fun. Of course, the kids can't sit on his lap, which is kind of sad. But and then they did virtual visits, so the kids got to have virtual one-on-one visits with Santa, which was still pretty cool. But it's a smaller organization, and they've been trying to do more and more and more. So I think that being able to see representation of yourself is important. So I would love to be able to help them. So that's what it is this month. And then it'll be a new organization in July and so on. I mean, January.
Okay.
And so on throughout the year.
A couple other questions. Just because it is the holiday season. You are doing phenomenally well, by the way. I mean, I know it's been 6 months. You did tell me though, when we were talking the other day, that it's like you've started the grieving process long before he actually passed. Like you've already kind of been going through this grieving process, because that's just the way that your relationship has turned. But how was Thanksgiving for you this year? I mean, totally different. So how was that?
Definitely harder than I thought it was going to be. The day started out pretty okay. I'm here with my aunt, so we were talking about food and all that, typical things that you would do. But it's, as you know, it's kind of like as we get closer to dinner, it started to hit a little bit more that he wouldn't be there. I always made him sweet potato pie, and he always joked that it was good, but not as good as his grandmother's. Like, we always sort of had this thing. And I didn't make any pie this year. I didn't even cook this year. And that was strange and different. And just not having his presence, because he was the life of the party. I was the laid back one, and he was always just again, even while sick, he was the one that was laughing and joking and just always alive.
Yeah.
And it was just different. It was quieter, it was calmer, and it, you feel the emptiness a little bit more. I know Christmas is going to be probably worse, because that was his favorite holiday. I mean, he was the big kid. He wanted to open presents like a week before Christmas. Every year. He would always be like, can we just open one? Just one. So, I think when it's hard to gauge doing well. It's kind of like, yeah, I go through the days and you go through the motions and you're fine. But things still hit randomly, especially if like I go to the grocery store. My husband had a favorite meal and there was a sauce that went with it, and I couldn't find it anywhere where we lived. Could never find it. And I remember going grocery shopping not too long after we got here, and happened to see this aisle and it said Peruvian food, which normally, it might say Hispanic and maybe Asian, but not Peruvian. And this meal was a Peruvian meal. So I was like, oh, cool. I went over there, looked at the shelves, and they had this sauce. And it was like, I grabbed it, put it in the cart before I realized I kind of don't need it, because I was making it for him. And that kind of like really punched in the chest. And I cried right there in the store. Songs, definitely, we were big into music. So songs definitely hit me. And my son, just seeing how he took on certain things that he learned from his father, definitely hits hard, because you don't know, what your kids are going to pick up until they're older. And so I was praying that he would get some of the good. Unfortunately, he had to see positive and negative, because sometimes when Stephen was sick, he wasn't the nicest person.
Yeah.
And so he, my son had to experience this and be so confused, because for him, it doesn't make sense. But to pick, like, he picks up not wanting me to carry any bags. He won't let me carry grocery bags, he opens the doors for me. And he's just been my support. If I even look a little sad, he's coming and giving me a hug. He's telling me that it's going to be okay. So
yeah.
We're still making it together.
Yeah, you are. So one final question though. Are you looking forward to 2021? Like, what do you want to see happen in your life in 2021?
I'm definitely looking forward to it. I'm a little nervous, because I feel like this can go one of two ways. It can be way better than 2020, or it can be, as we say, from the kettle to the fire. I don't know.
No.
But no, I am looking forward to continuing business for sure. I'm praying to be able to touch more people. It's skincare. It's kind of like, okay, well, what can you really do with that? But I know what it's like to be just a mom, tired, and have someone say, look, I'm going to run you a bath.
Yeah.
Throw bath salts in there, sit, soak, enjoy your bath.
Yeah.
Or there was a point in my life where I was in a shelter. I lived in a homeless shelter before I had my son. And something as simple as a gorgeous bar of soap that you can use is a big deal.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to focus on opportunities to do things that will allow that sort of feeling to happen for a person.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing, hopefully, if things open back up, where school life will be for my son. At this point, we had said that we may put him in school.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen, because I don't know
who knows
where we'll be. But yes. So figuring that part out and just navigating puberty.
Right. It's so fun. It's so fun.
so fun. Some days I just want to be like, oh, I wish your dad was here so he could talk to you about this, because
Right.
but I'm looking forward to it. I think that I joke, but at the end of the day, I think that it can't do anything but be better.
No, you're right. You're right.
Be better.
So too. I think so too. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for talking to me today. Thank you so much. I wanted to tell you, because when I heard your story the other day, like, I think it takes such incredible strength and patience to be someone's caretaker, to be someone's caregiver, like, and for as long as you did it, I mean, that's not easy. And I just wanted to commend you for doing that, because it's the most selfless act that you can do for someone, is to put all of your needs aside and all of your wants aside, like you did. It's a really amazing thing what you did. You're truly an amazing human for doing that. Really.
I'm trying to get through this without crying, so cut it out.
No, it is. So I just wanted to definitely tell you that. And so again, before we leave, I just want to have you tell everyone again, where do we find you? It's Astarie Apothecary on Instagram, because that's where I bought the things last night that I bought. But Facebook Correct. Is also
Astarie Apothecary, yes. Astarie and Apothecary. YouTube is Astarie Apothecary.
Okay. And then if we wanted to do the website, because the website's a little different, but we can find that when you go to all the other places. Okay.
Yes. Okay. There'll be links, but yes.
All right. Thank you again for talking to us today. Thank you. And I'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.